March 18, 1943. 25,000 feet above the Mediterranean. Flight Lieutenant Adrian Warburton held his modified Spitfire steady as cumulus clouds broke beneath him like shattered glass. His orders were simple: photograph the German convoy moving through the Strait of Sicily, then return to Malta. No engagement, no heroics, just pictures. But as he descended through 20,000 feet, 8 high-resolution cameras whirring in his stripped-down fuselage, he spotted 12 Messerschmitt Bf-109s climbing hard toward him. They were positioning themselves between him and home, between him and Malta. In that moment, every regulation said run. Every protocol demanded he abort. Instead, he checked his 2 remaining machine guns and rolled inverted. Before we continue, I want to know where you're watching from. Have you heard of Adrian Warburton, the reconnaissance pilot who became one of the most decorated and most dangerous aviators of World War II? Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about pilots who break orders to complete the mission. And if this story grabs you, hit that like button and subscribe. These tales of impossible courage deserve to be remembered. Now here's what makes this story extraordinary. Warburton wasn't supposed to fight, and what happened next would change how both sides viewed reconnaissance aircraft for the rest of the war. The Spitfire PR Mark IV wasn't built for combat. Engineers had stripped away armor plating to save weight. They'd removed most weaponry to extend range. What remained was a flying camera platform designed for one purpose: survival through speed and altitude. Maximum velocity at 35,000 feet. Minimal engagement capability. The theory was elegant. A reconnaissance pilot too valuable to risk, flying an aircraft too fast to catch, gathering intelligence too critical to gamble on dogfights. Warburton had insisted on keeping 2 303 Browning machine guns. His squadron commander had reluctantly agreed, probably expecting they'd never be fired. Most photo reconnaissance pilots removed all weapons. Every pound counted when you were trying to outrun Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts across hostile airspace. But Warburton had argued that 2 guns were better than none, even if they cost him 50 pounds and a few miles per hour. Now, watching those 12 Bf-109s spread into an interception line below him, he understood why his instinct had been correct. The convoy stretched across the strait, 3 cargo ships flanked by destroyers churning southeast toward Tunisia. Allied intelligence desperately needed those photographs. Field Marshal Montgomery was planning a major offensive in North Africa, and he had to know exactly what the Germans were shipping to Rommel's forces. Tiger's tanks, according to rumored reports, self-propelled guns, ammunition, fuel. Without confirmation, the offensive would proceed blind. Another reconnaissance mission would have to be attempted, probably with the same result. German fighters forcing the pilot to abort, the convoy slipping through undetected, and Allied troops facing unknown reinforcements. Warburton studied the tactical situation in seconds. 12 experienced Luftwaffe pilots, judging by their formation discipline. His Spitfire carried maybe 600 rounds total between both guns. Against a dozen enemy fighters, engagement seemed suicidal by every conventional measure, but Warburton possessed one critical advantage the Germans didn't know about. They thought they were intercepting a defenseless reconnaissance plane flown by a pilot, whose only priority was survival. They expected him to run. They were positioning themselves for an easy chase, not a fight. Their overconfidence would cost them everything. Adrian Warburton wasn't a typical RAF officer. At 24, he'd already earned a reputation as the most aggressive reconnaissance pilot in the Mediterranean theater. 300 missions flown. Shot down twice. Crash-landed 4 times. Court-martialed once for unauthorized low-level attacks during routine photo runs, grounded twice for insubordination, promoted 3 times for delivering results no other pilot could achieve. The Germans had placed a $5,000 bounty on his head, the highest price on any reconnaissance pilot in the theater. What made Warburton dangerous wasn't just flying skill. It was his complete disregard for procedure when the mission demanded adaptation. He'd studied German fighter tactics obsessively, memorizing the Bf-109's performance envelope, understanding exactly where the Spitfire held advantages. The Messerschmitt was faster in level flight and packed heavier armament, 2 20mm cannons and 2 machine guns versus his 2 light Brownings. but the Spitfire could outturn it at altitude and had slightly better climb rate above 20,000 feet. Warburton wasn't planning to dogfight 12 aircraft simultaneously. He was planning to use superior positioning and surprise to engage them one at a time, breaking their formation before they could coordinate. The lead Bf-109 never saw him coming. Warburton's dive brought him screaming down at over 450 miles per hour, dropping straight into the center of the German formation. Reconnaissance pilots didn't attack. They ran. That was the rule, written in blood across dozens of Mediterranean missions. But Warburton came inverted, diving through scattered clouds, his gun sight centering on the lead Messerschmitt's engine cowling. He opened fire at 300 yards. Long range, but his deflection was perfect. Tracers walked across the Bf-109's canopy. Metal fragments tore away. White smoke erupted from the engine, then orange flame. The Messerschmitt rolled onto its back and fell away, trailing fire like a comet. 1 down, 11 to go. The formation scattered in confusion. German pilots broke in all directions trying to comprehend what had just happened. In that moment of chaos, Warburton pulled up hard, bleeding speed and a vertical climb that brought him above the formation again. He'd learned this from studying Luftwaffe tactics captured in RAF intelligence reports. Vertical fighting preserved energy, maintained initiative, and forced opponents into reactive postures. A second Bf-109 climbed after him, the pilot probably enraged by seeing his wingman destroyed by a reconnaissance plane. Bad decision. Rage made pilots predictable. The German was fixated on revenge, not tactics. Warburton let him close to 200 yards, then snap-rolled right and pulled the Spitfire into a climbing spiral. The Messerschmitt tried to follow but couldn't match the turn radius. Physics betrayed the German pilot. His aircraft's higher wing loading demanded wider circles. Warburton reversed, dropping in behind the Bf-109's tail. One quick burst. Ammunition was precious now, and the Messerschmitt's tail section disintegrated. Control surfaces shredded. The aircraft tumbled out of control, the pilot bailing out seconds later, his parachute blossoming white against blue Mediterranean sky. 2 down. 10 to go. The remaining Germans were reorganizing, their initial shock transforming into professional fury. Warburton heard radio chatter in German. He didn't speak the language, but he understood the tone. They were coordinating. They'd realized they were facing someone who wouldn't run, someone who understood energy management and vertical tactics, someone dangerous. They were going to swarm him. This was the critical moment. Against 10 fighters working together, even the most skilled pilot couldn't survive long. Numbers eventually overwhelmed skill. Warburton needed to break their coordination again, force them back into individual duels where surprise and positioning mattered more than firepower. He spotted a pair of Bf-109s climbing on his left, trying to gain altitude advantage. Instead of evading, he turned toward them. The unexpected aggression disrupted their timing. They'd expected evasion, not attack. Warburton fired a longer burst than he should have, eating up precious ammunition. But the result justified the expenditure. The lead, Bf-109, exploded in a brilliant fireball as rounds found its fuel tank. Burning debris tumbled earthward. 3 down. 9 to go. The wingman broke hard right, diving away. Warburton didn't chase. Chasing was how outnumbered pilots died. Tunnel vision on one target while others maneuvered into firing position. Stay fast, stay high, control the engagement. But his ammunition was running critically low now. Maybe 150 rounds remaining against 9 fighters. Each burst had to count absolutely, or he'd be defenseless with nearly half the enemy formation still intact. 4 more Bf-109s climbed from below, working as a coordinated team. Smart pilots. They were attempting a pincer, threats above and below, forcing Warburton to split his attention. Against a normal fighter with full ammunition, the tactic wouldn't work. Against a reconnaissance plane that should have been running 5 minutes ago, it should have been devastating. Warburton calculated angles and closure rates in his head. The lower group would reach firing position first. He had maybe 10 seconds. He pushed the nose down, diving toward the lower group at maximum speed. The Germans expected him to pull up and evade. He didn't. At 400 yards, he opened fire on the lead Bf-109. Short burst. Pure deflection shooting, leading the target, predicting its path, releasing bullets into empty air that wouldn't be empty when they arrived. The Messerschmitt's engine exploded. The aircraft snap-rolled left, colliding with its wingman. Both aircraft tumbled from the sky in a twisted mass of metal and flame. 5 down, 7 to go. But Warburton's attack run had bled off his speed. The higher group of Bf-109s was diving on him now, and he was too slow to outrun them. He heard the rattle of their 20mm cannons opening fire. Tracers streaked past his canopy. Something hit his left wing with a sharp metallic crack, probably 7.92-meter machine gun fire, but nothing critical. He yanked the Spitfire into a violent spiral, pulling G-forces that grayed his vision at the edges. The Bf-109s overshot, their higher speed working against them in the tight turn. Warburton reversed, climbing again, regaining the altitude he'd sacrificed. A single Messerschmitt pilot stayed with him, matching his climb. Good pilot. Persistent. Dangerous. Warburton watched him in his mirror, calculating distances. The German was gaining slowly, his Bf-109's engine giving him just enough extra power to close the gap. At 100 yards, the German opened fire. Cannon shells punched holes through Warburton's tail section. His aircraft shuddered. Warning lights flickered on the instrument panel. But Warburton held steady, waiting. 50 yards. The German was confident now. Easy kill. Warburton chopped the throttle completely and deployed his flaps. The Spitfire decelerated violently. The Bf-109 shot past him like it had been catapulted, the German pilot caught completely by surprise. For 2 seconds, Warburton had a perfect no-deflection shot. Dead astern, no lead required, just aim and fire. He emptied his guns, everything remaining. One long, sustained burst. The Messerschmitt came apart under the concentrated fire. Wings folded, fuselage broke. The pilot never ejected. 6 down, 6 to go, and Warburton's guns were empty. The remaining 6 Bf-109s regrouped below him, circling like sharks that had just realized their prey was bleeding. They'd seen the tracers stop. No return fire. The reconnaissance plane was out of ammunition. Now it was just a matter of time. They spread out, preparing for a coordinated attack that Warburton couldn't defend against. Except he wasn't defenseless. Not completely. Warburton still had speed. He still had altitude. And he possessed the most important weapon any pilot carries: situational awareness and tactical thinking. He also had something the Germans didn't know about. His cameras were still running, and he'd just remembered something from his pre-mission briefing. The convoy below was approaching an area where British submarines patrolled. If Warburton could lead the Bf-109s low enough, close enough to the convoy, the German fighters would have to worry about their own anti-aircraft fire. Convoy gunners were notoriously trigger-happy. RAF intelligence reports documented numerous cases of German fighters being fired on by their own ships when combat got too close. It was a gamble, but everything about this mission had been a gamble since the moment he'd rolled inverted and attacked instead of running. Warburton rolled inverted again and dove straight down toward the convoy. Maximum speed. The altimeter unwound rapidly. 20,000 feet. 15,000. 10,000. The Bf-109s followed, sensing the kill. They were closing in, preparing to fire on a defenseless target. At 5,000 feet, Warburton leveled off, flying straight toward the convoy at wavetop height. The German ships spotted the incoming aircraft, multiple contacts, high speed, combat maneuvers overhead, and did exactly what he'd hoped. They opened fire indiscriminately, the sky filled with flak. Black bursts of 80mm shells exploded around the diving Messerschmitts. Lighter 20mm tracers filled the air in deadly streams. The convoy's anti-aircraft cruiser unleashed a barrage that turned the airspace into a killing zone. The German fighters scattered, breaking off their attack to avoid being destroyed by their own defenses. Warburton threaded through the flak, flying between the ships at 300 feet. Insane. Suicidal. But the convoy gunners were tracking the higher Bf-109s, not the single low-flying aircraft that had already passed their engagement ceiling. He cleared the convoy and turned hard left, skimming the waves, salt spray misting his canopy. Behind him, the flak barrage continued. He watched in his mirror as one Bf-109 flew directly into a burst of 88mm fire. The aircraft disintegrated, there 1 second, gone the next, replaced by expanding smoke and falling debris. Another was hit by 20mm fire, smoking badly, limping away from the fight toward Sicily. 7 down, 4 to go. The remaining 4 Messerschmitts had had enough. They'd intercepted what should have been an easy target, a defenseless reconnaissance plane, and lost more than half their formation. Their fuel was running low after the extended combat. Their quarry was still alive, still flying, heading for home. They broke off the engagement, turning back toward Sicily. Warburton kept the Spitfire low, hugging the waves until he was certain they weren't following. Then he climbed slowly, nursing the damaged aircraft back toward Malta. The left wing had multiple holes. The tail section was shredded. Oil pressure was dropping slowly, but the engine still ran. The controls still responded. And critically, the cameras were intact. They'd recorded everything: the convoy, the engagement, the impossible victory. When Warburton landed at Lucca Airfield in Malta, his Spitfire looked like it had flown through a shredding machine. Ground crews counted 47 bullet and cannon holes. The intelligence officer demanded to know why he'd returned with combat damage from a reconnaissance mission. Warburton's response was simple: ran into some Messerschmitts. They objected to being photographed. When the camera footage was developed, intelligence officers couldn't believe what they were seeing. The photographs showed the convoy in perfect detail, exactly what they'd requested. 3 cargo ships, 2 destroyers, precise heading and speed. But they also showed the engagement. The gun camera footage, recorded automatically whenever Warburton fired, documented 6 confirmed kills. The mission cameras, running throughout the flight, captured 2 more Bf-109s colliding after Warburton's initial attack, and another being destroyed by friendly flak. 9 confirmed kills. 2 probables from damaged aircraft fleeing the engagement, plus complete reconnaissance photographs of the convoy. The intelligence value alone was enormous. The photographs revealed that Germany was shipping Tiger tanks to Tunisia, heavy armor that would require adjusted Allied tactics. Montgomery's planners immediately revised their offensive strategy based on Warburton's intelligence. When the attack launched 2 weeks later, Allied forces were prepared for the heavy armor they encountered. But the psychological impact was even greater. Warburton had engaged 12 Luftwaffe fighters in an aircraft designed for photography, not combat. He'd shot down 6 personally, caused 2 more to collide, and led another into friendly fire. He'd completed his photographic mission despite the engagement, and he'd brought back damaged aircraft and gun camera footage proving every claim. The story spread through both Allied and German air forces like electricity through copper wire. Luftwaffe pilots began treating RAF reconnaissance Spitfires with considerably more respect. They couldn't know which unarmed photoplane might actually be carrying guns and piloted by someone crazy enough to use them. The RAF faced a different problem. Warburton had directly disobeyed orders. Again, he'd engaged when explicitly told not to. He'd risked a valuable aircraft and an irreplaceable pilot. By every regulation in the book, he deserved court-martial. Instead, they awarded him the Distinguished Service Order. His citation praised extraordinary courage and exceptional skill in aerial combat while completing a vital reconnaissance mission under extreme circumstances. The citation didn't mention that he'd broken orders. Everyone understood that sometimes the pilot in the cockpit sees the tactical situation more clearly than the commander reading briefing papers on the ground. Adrian Warburton continued flying reconnaissance missions throughout 1943 and early 1944. He accumulated decorations faster than almost any RAF pilot of the war: the Distinguished Service Order with 2 bars, the Distinguished Flying Cross with bar, and the American Distinguished Flying Cross. His confirmed kill count reached 22 aircraft, making him one of the few reconnaissance pilots to achieve ace status. On April 12, 1944, Warburton took off on a reconnaissance mission over Germany. He never returned. His Spitfire disappeared somewhere over Bavaria. No wreckage was found, no grave confirmed. The Germans never reported shooting him down. He simply vanished into history, leaving behind only his legend and the impossible mission over the Mediterranean that proved reconnaissance pilots could fight with devastating effectiveness when circumstances demanded it. Military historians later studied Warburton's engagement as a textbook example of economy of force, destroying 9 enemy aircraft while expending fewer than 600 rounds of ammunition. Most fighter pilots in World War II expended thousands of rounds per victory. Warburton's success came from surprise, vertical tactics, ammunition discipline, and tactical thinking that turned enemy defenses into weapons. But perhaps most importantly, Warburton understood his real mission. He wasn't ordered to take photographs and avoid combat. He was ordered to gather intelligence supporting Allied operations. Engaging the fighters wasn't a violation of that mission. It was enabling the mission. A dead pilot delivers no photographs. A pilot who survives by fighting, then completes the reconnaissance objective, delivers intelligence, and removes enemy assets simultaneously. Modern military doctrine explicitly includes this concept now. Reconnaissance forces train not just to observe and report, but to defend themselves aggressively when required. The phrase, economy of force, traces directly back to engagements like Warburton's, achieving maximum effect with minimum resources.